Hi, this is Sarah, and today I'm going a bit out on a limb here to talk you through probably one of the toughest points in my life. Now, why have I suddenly decided to do this today? I spoke to a girl yesterday who's still in this kind of area of her life, and a few things reminded me as to how lonely I felt during this time, how I felt like nobody else understood. And I just want to know, or to do something to try and help, even as just one person who's going through this or is being affected by this, to help them realise they're not alone, to help them realise that there is hope. So this all started in 2008 when Thomas and I got married, and we were fairly clear right from the start we wanted a family. And yeah, I fell pregnant quite easily. So I was pregnant within about 3 months, had my first miscarriage. And this became the kind of recurring theme for the next year and a half. The worst time this happened, I think it was about the 5th time, that we'd been to the doctor at 10 weeks, the heartbeat was there, and she looked at me and said, yeah, this time it's going to be fine. I got swine flu. 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks later, I went back to the doctor. She got out the ultrasound and said, there's no heartbeat. You're going to have to go to the hospital and have another operation to remove this pregnancy. Now, we've been so up and down. You go through all the emotions of being excited, expectant and scared, and then, follows by a bit of grief, despair, sadness, and not really knowing why. We never got any answers as to what actually was going on. But after that, I took quite a long time off, about 5 weeks off work, to try and get my head around what was going on. So I'd actually hidden this from pretty much everyone at work other than my direct boss and a couple of good friends, because I was worried about being judged. At the same time, I was dealing with comments from all helpful people at work or customers or whatever saying, it's time you stop focusing on your career and start trying for a family and not getting any younger. Kind of swallowed it down and answered as respectfully as I could. But yeah, this was a big changing point, and I decided that if we weren't going to have a family, then I wanted to change jobs. I wanted to do something I really enjoyed. And we'd had discussions prior to getting married that, maybe we'd have kids of our own and then adopt a child. I'd always been interested in adoption. I always wanted to help provide a family to children. And so it was a fairly easy decision for us to actually stop trying to put ourselves through the trauma and start the adoption process, which we did. And this went on in 2010 through the year, and we had to obviously lay ourselves bare and discuss everything and emotions and what was happening to us in a way which I wouldn't expect any 29-year-old pair to have to do. We went through group counselling as part of the adoption process, and it got to just before Christmas in 2010, and they said that we'd completed the process and they would put us onto the adoption list once the final group counselling session was out the way in January. So we went into the Christmas holidays quite relaxed. We went off and had a week skiing. The two of us learnt to ski, I should say, not a week ski. That would be overestimating our abilities. And it was 23rd of December, and I'd finished for work. I went out for a walk with my mum and my dog through the snow, just, relaxing. I didn't take a phone with me. Saw a guy cycling along through the snow, thinking, who's that crazy man? What's he doing cycling in the snow? Nobody goes out cycling in the snow. As he got closer, I realised, that looks familiar. That's Thomas. And he got even closer. I thought, he looks pretty annoyed right now. So First question, why have you gone out without your phone? Well, it's the day before Christmas, why do I need to worry about my phone? Well, it turns out that whilst I'd left the house, he'd received a call from social services to explain that a baby girl had been dropped in the hospital that morning and needed a new home. So it was the moment our lives changed, if I'm honest. It was one of those moments that you can never forget. And yeah, we got a call while we were home to say, you need to give this baby a name. We need to complete all the paperwork because we're leaving for the Christmas holidays at lunchtime. So you need to get to the hospital in like half an hour so that we can, check everything's okay, do the handover. Whoa, it moved so quickly that day. All our friends and family were amazing. People were coming to the house and dropping clothes and, beds and other kids' stuff off for us. My mum's there washing it all and getting it all ready. And we brought Ellie home on the 25th of December. And yeah, she was our kind of Christmas miracle that year. And it changed our lives. I was off work overnight, had to explain to people as to, apologies. I did mention I was going through adoption, but told you it would take forever. It didn't. And also, it brought a whole wave of emotions out in me to actually understand what must have been going on for this mother, to feel like she had no other option than to drop her baby in hospital. And I found that very difficult to understand. It was a very emotional process for me, in terms of sitting there in the middle of the night feeding Ellie and thinking, what did that poor woman go through? And how can I ensure that I live up to the expectation of the person who she would want her child to be brought up by? We also had this slight unease in the fact that because her parentage was unknown, we had no real confirmation that we could adopt her until she was 18 months old. So we had 18 months of waiting for the phone to ring, for social services to tell us that someone had come back to claim her. And this was really hard. It was emotionally really, really tough, because I've got the part of me that thinks a baby's always best with its mother. And then the other part of me, well, this is my baby now. This is the baby that I'm nurturing, and she's part of our family. And this internal struggle was really hard. So the process didn't end at the point of adoption. It carried on. And then we applied for a second child. We got told very clearly, it's very unlikely you're going to get a second child. So, okay, well, so be it. However, we did. 3 years after Ellie was born, 2 years, 11 months, we got another phone call, and I was sat in a meeting at work, having gone back to work. And yeah, my husband, I buttoned him and said, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back later. And the answer came back, no, you will call me back now. I've never actually figured out why they called him. Maybe they realised I was going to be emotional at these points. But yeah, we got a second child, Louisa. And yeah, she was born anonymously in one of the hospitals in Potsdam, and also needed a new home. She was tiny, and I remember this first picture of Ellie having just been informed that all of a sudden she's got a baby sister, which she was not expecting. Taking her into the hospital and then putting Louisa onto her lap. And Louisa was so tiny, she was only 2.5 kilos. And Ellie just cuddling her. And I thought, yeah, this is right. This is the way it's meant to be. And if this is, if the miscarriages are what I had to go through to get the family that we wanted, then that was the journey that we had to go on. So, yes, it's hard. And no, the pain doesn't end at the point where you decide or you end up with a family. Adoption itself can be quite hard. And I'm sure this is going to carry on in their lives. You know, Ellie's now 9, Louisa's 6. And they're amazing children. They're so much fun. They challenge us every day, and sometimes more than we want to be challenged, like any other kids. We don't think about this on a day-to-day basis. We don't even recognise sometimes that they're adopted, that their story's any different. And yet, we talk openly about it. So occasionally they just bring it up. Ellie starts talking about her Bauchfrau, which translation is tummy mother, or tummy woman, which is the term we use for the person, the birth mother, and explains to people, you know, how she's a Christmas child, and she tells her story in the most random ways. She's a child that, you know, has a real sense of somebody, whether she trusts them, and if she does, she just opens up and starts talking. This is generally one of the things that comes up, which is great. I mean, for me, this is what we wanted. We want them to be able to understand it as much as they can. And Louisa, we can be in a public place and she says, well, you're not my real mother. And again, people look at me like, oh God, you know, how does that feel? I'm like, well, it's her way of explaining to herself what it is. She understands, and she doesn't want another mother than me right now, but this is her logic. And the fact that she talks about it is good. I don't get offended. I'm sure later on she might use it against me properly at some point, but she doesn't mean it. She's 6. She's just processing it in her head. So I hope this has helped. And I just want to say one last thing to anybody who has ever given up a child for adoption, especially the women that gave our children up for adoption. I don't know your story. I can't explain to my children why you felt it was the best option to leave them and ask them to be put into adoption. But I do tell them what I think, that you did this because you cared, because you loved them, because you thought they would have a better life. And that's the important part for my children, is that you did it for the right reasons. And I'm super proud of Ellie's creativity and caringness, Louisa's rocket-like abilities to just storm through any situation. And I guess the funny point is that Louisa looks an awful lot like me. Blondish curly hair, which is why I now leave mine to be curly, because I can't straighten mine and tell her hers is beautiful. And Ellie looks an awful lot like Thomas. So our family